Have you heard of something called Rawls' veil of ignorance? So it's a thought experiment that's quite famous that basically goes, how would you design society if you were like a 21-year-old in Exeter? How would you design society if you were a sweatshop worker in China? How would you design society if you were born into sort of a oil tycoon family in the Middle East? And when we when we ask ourselves those questions, we kind of come to a conclusion that you would design society to benefit yourself. So you would, if you were the 21-year-old from Exeter, then you would design it to be maybe a place where you could, if you're the type of person that's quite ambitious, you would like lots of opportunities from a sort of youth standpoint. If you were the lady with the, if you're born into the oil tycoon family, you would design it so maybe that you could easily keep your wealth and you could easily make investments and you could live quite a rich and lavish life. And if you were born as a sweatshop worker in China, maybe you design it so that you could transcend the sweatshop or you could make more money. And so there's something about morality that true morality, we kind of have to take ourselves out of it. So I've basically been going on this interesting sort of journey of, I guess, moral discovery through a couple philosophies and a couple religious texts recently. And this was the first one that kind of, it took me by surprise that maybe true morality, it does take ourselves out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I actually saw because Julia showed me the podcast Instagram story where you'd referenced that thing. I didn't know it by name when you said it, and I liked what you'd written, and it made me think. So I'm pleased you brought it up now. Yeah, I think there's some truth to it, man. I mean, in any discussion of depth and worth like this, it's going to be very difficult to completely extract your ego and your personal intentions and the biases of your worldview and your experiences from it. And even if you think you're doing that, you're probably instilling some bias unconsciously. I'm pretty sure of that. Um, and so I guess what it makes me think is that we have to be very careful when we talk about things like morality, because it is very easy to just be driven by our own biases and our own experiences and our own values, and that is just not reflective of the majority of the world. And actually we can also fall into the trap of being in a kind of social echo chamber where me and you, compared to some of the people that you listed there in your examples, we are very different, right? We're very close to the 21-year-old from Exeter. And so if I just talk to you about moral issues, you're probably going to agree with me on pretty much every level. And so our biased views get even more consolidated and resistant to change, and the cognitive dissonance becomes more significant. And so that also is a call to expose ourselves to new perspectives in this way, and be bit more intentional with what we read and how we allow what we read to influence our thinking. But yeah, interesting. Tell me more
Mm.
about. Oh,
Yeah, so Rawls was a utilitarian and he, so for people that don't know what that means, it's kind of the moral philosophy that you should maximize well-being to the greatest number of people. So he would go with that thought experiment that you should design society that it will be as good for the sweatshop worker as all three of those people I just listed. It should be, you should design society so that it benefits the 21-year-old from Exeter as well as the sweatshop worker from China equally.
as much
Um,
or practically.
yeah, so it maximizes their well-being, is what I believe he would sort of say. And I think utilitarianism, I think it has a lot of flaws in it. But what I can say is that reflecting on my own morality, I'm not much for utilitarian. I think like a lot of these theories, these moral theories that I'm going to bring up, I kind of just realize how like how bad I am with them. But I think the thing that I find kind of good, and I'll talk about this more about this, is with a utilitarian mindset, is you do treat everyone the same. And so I think was thinking about applying this in my daily life, and like if I was trying to maximize people's well-being around me, I wouldn't cut someone off in traffic and get angry. I wouldn't like get get. I think I would like my daily gratitude to other people would be a lot higher. So I think it's a pretty good moral philosophy in terms of like how nice you are to people. But yeah.
Yeah. What would you say your criticisms of utilitarianism are?
I think it kind of goes back to like the trolley problem. If you were a person on a train and you were going to, and the train is, or you could choose which way the train was going to run over certain people on the tracks. And there was five normal people on one side of the train tracks, and there's one person on the other side, but that one person happened to be, I don't know, like the president or someone like a mother with um a child, and the five people turned out to be criminals, you would probably run over the mother with the child or the president over the five people with the criminals, because the five people that increases well-being more.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So what you're saying is you criticize the assumption that, well, now we get murky water because we're talking about the value of a life. And does somebody's actions and circumstances influence their right to life or the value that their life holds compared to that? I mean, now we're in an interesting place. But I see the point that you're
Mm.
coming, um, because you would take out more lives. But you know, in the example of, okay, you've got five, let's say, average in many metrics citizens that stay on the right side of the law and contribute to their community and have families, etc. And you had one person on the other side who's, in inverted commas, more influential, like the president or a politician or a music artist or whatever. It would make sense to me to save the greatest number of people and follow the utilitarian mindset.
Mm.
Now you tell me that those five people have all murdered somebody, well, then that's when the water um interesting.
Yeah, there's a anime TV show called Death Note where it's kind of a moral. Death Note's like a moral show. It's like it's a show full of moral dilemmas, but in disguise, where the main character, Light, he is given this thing called a death note, where he can write down everyone who he writes down their name, they die. And so what he does is he writes down all the criminals at the start and all the bad people in the world, people in jails, the pedophiles, and kills them all. But then what the people from the Secret Service, this other character called L, thinks that's wrong, and that you shouldn't just go around killing people. So L uses a L uses a utilitarian view, whereas Light has just a total different like intention on morality. And yeah, that's quite, it's an interesting one. I want to kind of come back to this because I think to really kind of diagnose where like my the start of this sort of morality change for me, I want to sort of go back to the Bible. So I'm reading like Matthew at the moment, and within Matthew, yeah, um, within Matthew, it kind of uses a moral philosophy a lot called Deontology, where basically it relies on the intention. So Matthew has a lot of statements like you don't have to go and murder someone to go to hell. Being angry and having the intention of murdering someone is as bad as going out and murdering someone. There's also lots of lines like anyone who anyone who thinks of lust has already committed adultery in their heart. And
I remember that quote from like Jesus RE.
yeah, and it's very, I think, true to some of the Bible's philosophy that this like small seed is as bad as this like giant thing. So there's also a very it's not in this context, but it uses the example of like the mustard seed, that the mustard seed can grow. Uh, yeah, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can like yeah, you can move a mountain with your faith. Like if it's that small and it can grow, it's very like biblical philosophy that like this small thing inside of you can grow so big. Um, and so for it, I'll give you like a little example. Like so, I read that on this day, and I remember I just finished uni, and I went to this like bar, and I basically, I just finished uni. I went to this bar with my friends. I don't normally do this sort of stuff. And this guy kind of like refused to serve me because I looked too drunk, even though like I wasn't at all. And internally, I kind of got angry, but then like I kind of remembered the thing about how murdering someone and having anger in your heart is kind of equally as bad. And then I was just kind of like, I'm not going to deep the situation. I'm just going to keep it here. I'm just not going to try and feel angry at all. That's kind of as bad as reacting in this bar situation and complaining, etc. It's not that deep. So I guess the question that comes to me is, first, what extent do you like agree this moral philosophy is it should be applicable? And I guess it's not the question of whether it's true. It's like, can you see this as a good philosophy to live life, and how practical is it?
Well, I don't think it's true, but it sounds like it could be practical for some people. I think my argument would just be I don't think we are in control of our thoughts and feelings. We're just not. We're in control of how we cognitively reframe them, and we're in control of our actions. In theory, I mean, at least it feels like that's the case, that we have some will over what we do and what we respond to and what thoughts and feelings we allow to manifest in our behavior. Okay, yeah. But, you know, I don't think I would have control if somebody cut me up in traffic when I'm driving, right? Some frustration would clearly bubble up in me. But the importance is that I was mindful of that and didn't let it take full control. I didn't let it breach the threshold. Then I became angry. I can have an angry emotion because I think our emotions are implicit and natural, you know? Stimulus response. I don't think we're necessarily involved in that relationship. You know, when you're hungry and you see nice food, you salivate, right? But you're not in control of the fact you salivate and your tummy rumbles. You're in control of whether that food goes into your mouth, but you're not in control of maybe the initial bodily response. So I don't agree with the idea that it's the exact same. If we were like robots and we could program all of our responses to reality, then maybe, but that's just not how it is. We fall prey to our biology all the time. It's just the extent that you let that control your life that's the difference. But this idea can be practical in the sense that you started having the intention of anger for this barman, and because you reflected on the philosophy that intentions do have value and moral weight to them, then you calmed that feeling down and refrained from feeding it and acting on it. And that's great. But I disagree with the fundamental idea that intentions are equal to action. No way, because I think if we went around in society and could read the thoughts and feelings of everybody around us, we'd be terrified.
Yeah. Yeah, the name of the game is kind of like to handle your emotions in that case. The Bible uses like quite an extreme solution of like, if it says like if your right eye causes you to stumble, you should like gouge it out in the context of your right eye being like lustful. And you should throw that part of your body away.
Also, Jacob, I would bring in, I think it's a sort of Jungian idea that is sort of his head that you can only be good if you really have to wrestle with your intentions to be bad. I think that also holds some water in this debate, right? I think it was something where I think I read it in the Freud writings that I'm reading at the moment, that the most virtuous people are those that have come to terms with their capacity to be unvirtuous. So, my response to that Bible idea would be, is the person that never feels lustful actually virtuous in terms of how they overcome their lust or their anger or their resentment? The person that doesn't have the intention, it just doesn't bubble up? Or is the more virtuous person the person that feels those feelings strongly and has to fucking weather that storm inside themselves and not allow it to manifest? I believe in the latter, 100%, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a good question, Nate. Like, because I guess one could, like, maybe with such strong faith and dedication, I kind of believe that you can, like, really suppress that feeling of lust, and you can, like, kind of, like, maybe a Christian would just, like, not feel it. And you can kind of make yourself, like, you can condition yourself not to feel it. But yes, like, or you can handle it, I guess. Like the example you're proposing there, that you can integrate your shadow and you can hear that thought bubble up, but you cannot give into it, and you can distract yourself and move on.
Because is it faith or is it blindness and delusion? I'm not saying I'm right. Again, it comes back to the discussion of any time we talk about something deep like this, we're going to be tainted by our own biases, of course. But generally, I think my principle is that if there's a natural but uncomfortable feeling or thought that comes to me out of my control, it's far better for me to move toward it, analyze it, alchemize it, and integrate it than to pretend it's not there and over time keep squashing it and repressing it. It's like, for example, pretending I'm not insecure is way less effective than looking at my insecurity in the fucking face, doing something anyway, and realizing that insecurity doesn't need to persist anymore. And maybe you could argue that if you just try and pretend like you don't feel that way, or push it down, or use your faith to not feel quite natural things, then it just gets repressed and repressed and repressed. And it's a very small example, but it just came to my brain in this second. The fact that there are many memes and jokes and conspiracy theories about people high up in religious institutions being a bit dodgy sexually. I mean, that is a thing. There's a joke about the priest touching the little boy. Why is that? That's supposed to be the holiest man. That's supposed to be the guy that doesn't have lust and is in line with the divine and with God. That's, you know? So Freud's probably laughing in his grave about things like that, because that's that's maybe repressed sexuality, rearing its head in a different manner. I don't know, but I definitely would take the approach that I you can alchemize your mental afflictions, but you can't
Mm,
get rid of them. If you
mm.
can, I think, to a degree.
Yeah. I think the argument of repression, I think, is really strong. Actually, I think, I think the thing that I can't ignore is I feel like I've just seen like Christian people that their heart is so pure and they're so like there's such a they're a person of high faith that like anger just isn't in their vocabulary. Um,
Well, dude, I agree that people like this. Like, I think about my grandmother and how good intentioned she is in all her interactions and how she touches the world. But I don't think that's necessarily Christianity. I think it's the values of that faith that have aligned with her soul. But you can cut away a lot of the rest of the other stuff. There are some core principles about treating everybody with love and trying not to give in to your temptation, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, great. I agree with that. And they're real cornerstones of that faith. But I don't think it's like a black and white thing where if you're not a Christian, you can't
mm,
access the purity of heart. If you are a Christian, they are. It's like there are good Christians, there are bad. This is something that C.S. Lewis wrote about in what's it? What's the title to it? And it's a book about Christianity. I can't remember how exactly he phrased the title, but he said there are bad Christians, there are good Christians, there are bad non-Christians and good non-Christians, but the good non-Christians are more Christian than the bad Christians, if that makes sense. It's a way of being.
mm.
It's a title. It's not a label. My theory can still be right, and what you've experienced with people, religious people you've met, those two things can coexist in like for sure.
Yeah, I think we can reach some middle ground here. I wanted to ask you about like the priest example because that was pretty compelling. Of like, why do you think the priest has decided to touch children in that instance? Is it because he's been tempted by the devil, or is it like is it something where yeah, just why has he gone and done that?
Well, I have to, caveat by saying I've never experienced any of this myself. I've heard stories and allegations do happen across the world. And I guess the point I'm really making is that that joke and that stereotype does exist in culture. It's not nice for maybe a very religious person to think about or hear me say, but it's true. The Nancy priest archetype is a thing in how in jokes that maybe primarily young people make, but it exists in culture. That idea, okay. And so my criticism is that if the religious leader is supposed to be the most pure and holy person, then that idea shouldn't exist. It's come from somewhere. So
Mm,
anyway, that aside, the reason it's interesting, well, it's Freudian repression all over again. I mean, are you actually telling me that an adult biological male can can be that celibate for that long and be normal psychologically? I don't. Yes, maybe they can. Maybe they can. Okay, there are definitely great religious people out there that follow these rules 100% and live a very pure divine life. Great. I do think that exists. But in principle, to me, obviously there are going to be people that break the rules eventually. Obviously the devil is going to whisper in their ear. Obviously their ego is going to get involved at some point because we're imperfect. We're human beings. We're not, yes, we're made in God's image in theory, but we're not gods, okay? We have a shadow, we have a dark side. And so it's almost like the model and the ideal doesn't translate to all realities. Maybe some people can reach that ideal, but not everyone will by any means.
mm. I think
And I
it's
don't know.
similar.
I'm just saying what came to my head and what felt right in this argument.
Yeah, and I think I think it is an archetype. You named it sort of the priest archetype, and I think it is an archetype. I think it's similar to the Satan story that he's, the high, he wanted to be the highest angel and fell all the way down, and how
Well, yeah,
like you can be that spiritually clear and like enlightened, but you can still have that much evil inside of you that's capable.
we could broaden that archetype to the twisted person in power, or
Mm,
the the person that signals something virtuous, but really they're quite immoral, or the person that signals to everyone how happy and healthy and well they are, but really behind closed doors they fucking hate themselves and they're depressed. That paradox of your title versus your character,
mm.
that's a thing,
And how does that happen?
because we we try to put ourselves in boxes and fulfill perfect labels when we're not perfect, man. We make mistakes. We make big fuck ups as human beings. Anyone that claims that they're they're closer to God than another person, I just don't. It just doesn't compel me.
Mm,
Just claiming that they've reached some higher spiritual level, that's ego in itself.
mm. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like the corrupt politician in power and the priest that touches children, and this kind of like, I guess, Scar from Lion King I put there as well. This like twisted person that has, I guess, outwardly um is titled as someone that's good, but behind closed doors is bad. I'm just trying to figure out like what made them like that, you know?
Well, it's beneficial to be praised in the social world.
Yeah.
So what's easier than being good? Seeming good.
Mm, mm,
It's much easier to be perfect as an image, as a persona, and and hide all your darkness and your imperfection from the world. But maybe it's far more virtuous again, it's Jungian individuation, to integrate all your imperfections and your darkness and cultivate a whole unified, individuated self that then you go out into the world as. And, I I find there's a certain depth to conversations with somebody who's had a fucking dark past and has made real mistakes and is trying to put their life together. That's more real than somebody pretending like everything's sunshine and rainbows and that they've got everything right the whole time.
yeah.
We love a story with setbacks. We love a story with darkness. We love a story with a character arc, not just perfection that's superficial from the off.
Mm,
So I guess these archetypes happen, yeah, because people want to signal competence and that they're all
mm.
put together. Us really are. Let's just be real. We're all just fumbling about, you know?
Yeah. I think my answer would be that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. In that that person who starts their career wanting to do the right things, so the politician realizes that it's easier to tell people lies and for their voting than it is for them to tell the truth because they won't get as many votes. And so you compromise on that. And then what's the next one that you compromise on? Well, it's easier to please the rich because they're the one that's funding the stuff than it is to, I guess, be charitable. And I think you do these little things that go against that first principle that you started with. Um, when you wanted to obtain the career. And with each evil act, you kind of become a bit less desensitized. And I think hell is just so alluring, right? This like psychological place of hell. We know it's not good, but the road to it seems good. And I think that would be
Yeah,
my
I like that. Yeah, you get tarnished very gradually over time. No one flicks a switch and makes poor moral decisions. And yeah, there there will be a force that's trying to get you to conform to the game, and little sacrifices integrity along the way can mold you into somebody that you're not by the end. That's a very real thing. And that's why, I mean, so do you know about the Stanford prison experiment, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like a microcosm of this. They screened all these participants for psychological stability, and they were all healthy mentally. And then you put them in a social context where one group could dominate the other and had power over the other. You saw how their moral principles were tarnished, and that was even in this time frame of a couple days in a simulated prison that they all knew wasn't real, but they still conformed to that role and that persona. So maybe there's an element of that in your story of a politician that, just expand that time scale and make it the real world and a real world career path. Small little choices against their personal integrity and against who they really are, and then they come to the end of a career and realize they became someone they're not. That's what maybe a midlife crisis is, when somebody over their 20 years between 20 and 40 continues to make small decisions every month, every year, moving away from who their soul knows they should be, and they get to a point in their midlife and realize, fuck, my ego fucking took control in this car, and my soul sat in the back just tutting, shaking its head, and I'm not who I'm supposed to be. And then they make changes. That definitely happens. So I like that.
Mm.
The road to hell is marked with good intent. To a degree, I
Yeah.
think, right. And also, just sorry, before you go, not just good intentions, psychological wounds as well. I think the
Mm.
people that egoically dominate others are driven by deep insecurity from maybe when they were a child, or a fucking love they didn't receive from a parent. Our wounds fuel us a lot, and that's why shadow integration is so important, because our wounds live in the shadow. Yeah, I'll let.
Mm. So what I got with the prison experiment is that obedience is very effective to obtain from someone with small little yeses, small little commitments, and that I can see this in like a sales contact very easily. Of like, when obviously in sales, a lot of people know that when you get them to say yes a multiple times, they kind of accumulate, and they're used to saying yes, so they're used to going along with it or agreeing with you, etc. And I think good behavior is also like something that's very awarded, like in the sales context of like, you're being vulnerable with me when I ask you about your pain. That's good. I want more of that. I'm going to say thank you for being vulnerable, and I think we can stretch that out with any of these corrupt contexts of yes, they've said yes and yes and yes, and they're trying to fill this wound, and they haven't done this shadow integration, and this is the person. And what do you do when you're that deep when you're in a position of power, you're that deep into it, and you realize, shit, I kind of, it's like how it's a weird one to figure out, but like some people say like making the way you make your money is more important than how you, how you make your money is more important than how much money you make. Yeah. Is yeah, I've seen that a lot by successful people, and I think you only appreciate it when you look back.
And this is why like, a weird middle ground, because it's a competition. Everyone's agreed to the fact that it's a competition, so everyone's agreed that it's a dominance dispute. In a sense, you can think about it that way: a match or a team game. So where are the moral boundaries? This is something I'm trying to feel out over the next few years. Like, how much of my ego do I want to let in? What levels of sacrifice to my spiritual health, to the health of my sporting ego, let's say, do I want to make? Where's the fucking line? Because I know that I want to act through love and through peace and through my capital S self when I'm in the supermarket talking to a stranger, or when I see them out, in a park having a walk or whatever, those kind of things. But when it comes into a game situation where the other team have agreed that this is a dominance display, how much of ego is acceptable to manifest?
Can I put forward
And
a
then you
very
go on.
I was going to say, I'm going to put forward a very an idea that kind of slapped me in the face. So there used to be in olden days, well, there used to be thousands of years ago, a good and a bad. But what the devil did is he made it so that good and bad had so many different variations and so many different options. So there was only used to be two doors. One was good and one was bad. Now there's thousands of doors and they're all very blurred. So um so instead of there being one door for good and one door for bad, there's thousands of doors, and good and evil is such a grey area, and that's something that the devil did. And so we're kind of now like this, what Immanuel Kant would say if like absolutes as just objective good and evil. Now we're just in this time of subjective good and evil, and we all don't really know what's good and evil. It makes the world a lot more complex, and so things like ego and sport is kind of like it's a big grey area. It would just be so much more easier the world if it was like if there was just two doors, but there's not. There's thousands of doors, and everyone's got their own little subjective thing on it. And I think my stance on the ego thing, like, I am maybe gonna um, I think like in my career, I'm gonna be on some sales calls, right? Where I've got to create pain in people to sell them something. And for my solution is like I to be a sales guy, you kind of have to have an ego a little bit. And so I kind of take the Kobe Bryant approach of like turn that switch on, turn that switch off afterwards. And that's sort of I think I think that I've over the last couple of days been thinking about that kind of makes the most sense to me of like in the game, I am that guy. But like outside of it, I can just be Jacob the human being.
Yeah. Isn't it? Interesting. Because I've never thought about it that way, and this is why these conversations are so good. I've never thought about the point that in certain contexts, there's like a covert agreement everyone's made that the rules of the game of life in that context are different. The rules of the game of life on a basketball court are different to outside life, and maybe that's a point that I've not thought about enough. And I think your example, I've always thought about this in the morality of sales. It all depends to me on the actual quality of the product. Now, if you can
Yeah.
manage to nudge someone who's on the fence towards buying your shit, that's fine if what you give them does what it says on the tin and actually can help their life. I think if you've got that as a baseline, the persuasive techniques aren't as like cunning
Mm.
and like deceptive. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if I'm selling someone a 3 grand fitness plan that's gonna some obese person that's gonna decrease their weight, I can do any kind of sales tactic to get them through the door so that they buy that plan, even if it's a little bit immoral, because in the end it's gonna be, from a utilitarian perspective, it's gonna help them. Um, but yeah, and that's a greater good than the misleadingness from the sales example. Yeah. I also want to throw this idea for you. So I think Christian morality, if I really had to summarize into a couple things, at least one of them would be this idea of everyone's the same, right? Love thy neighbor. Um, there's a specific quote in Matthew where he goes like, if a shepherd has 100 sheep and one of them walks away, he will leave the 99 and he will go to that one sheep to get him back. Paraphrased. This idea is hard to integrate into mine and your lives with the ambition and the drive of us day to day. In that, I think for me, I just reflected on this moral principle that everyone's the same, and like metaphorically, everyone has the same sort of worth. And I think it's very against my ego, because if I'm being honest with myself, I wouldn't go and find that one sheep. I would keep the 99. Um, I feel like my ego doesn't treat everyone the same. I feel like I don't admire people that that don't struggle. I feel like I don't treat like someone like Jesus would, he would have sympathy for criminals. He would heal them. Um, I just don't see any of this kind of Christian morality in this sense, like working, well, being acted out by me at this current moment. And so this is one that I've been very like reflecting on a lot as well. With why is this? Well, is because I have an ego, and what do I do about that? Well, I don't really know.
Okay, I'm just noting down what I think here because I think it would make sense, and it also calls back to something we said previously. So it's a nice idea, isn't it? But it's very hard to act out because of the intentions of your own ego, and also because what I picked up from what you're saying, and this isn't a dig at you whatsoever, because I'm the same, and pretty much everyone is the same. We see the world through a very comparative lens.
Mm,
So this person is struggling less than you did. This person's not struggling at all. This person's struggling more. This person works as hard as you. They work less. They work harder than you. This person had this starting hand in life compared to mine that was this. Like, it's a very comparative mindset. Um,
mm,
what's making you less willing to love everyone in the same to the same degree? And man, I'm in that state too. Everyone's in that state pretty much. Um, And the solution, and it's simple to say, but bloody hard to do, I guess, is removing that comparison. And how do you do that? Well, this calls back to the beginning of our conversation. You remove yourself. You
mm,
remove yourself. Take everything I've done and everything I worked for and all my values and my principles, take them out of the situation and see the person for what they are without the comparison. That's when you love somebody that maybe your ego looks down upon. God, man, that's a lifetime that it takes to do that. That's levels of empathy that are very hard to cultivate. So again, it's a nice idea, difficult in practice, but yeah.
yeah. Or in the Kobe Bryant idea, it's maybe you can be comparative within elite sport, and I can be comparative within sales. But outside of that, I can treat people the same because you kind of are like, like if someone makes a lot of money, I'm interested in them and they can help me for business. But if they don't, then I'm not going to be interested as much and I probably won't make as much effort. But outside of that, maybe outside of business, I can treat people the same, like strangers and shit. So,
I think the material world and the things that we do are always nudging to be comparative. In a sports game, you're comparing how many points this team scored compared to this team. That's how you decide who wins the bloody game. And you compare who played an X amount of minutes, who scored X amount of points, who created those points, who facilitated, etc. And your world, it's a fucking stock market that tells you exactly how much each company's worth. Or, this sales guy made this amount this month. This sales guy made this amount. This product is this much. The profit margin on it is this much. It's all metrics. It's all comparison. But let's say that's you living through your business persona, and in my case, my sporting persona, and so comparative is necessary. But if I meet you at a soul to soul level, let's say independent of what job we do or where we go in the world, we meet around a campfire and we have a drink and we talk about life. I, I don't want my ego to be intruding into that. I want to meet you
mhm.
at our core, or meet you as I would meet you when we were babies, when we haven't done any of that material world shit. And we are the same. We are just a soul that's come into this world and we haven't picked up egoic labels yet. So maybe that's it. You have to act with your ego because it's functional. And the comparative mindset is functional in a certain situation. It's like a tool, like the way a builder uses certain tools to build a house. But when you go home, you don't take those tools with you. You don't take the tools from work to your place of love and your place of rest. You wouldn't take your tools from work to to your engagement with your family and the people you love. And so when you meet just another human soul, you have to be just another human soul. And throw all those metrics out the window. But again, the necessary caveat, it's a nice idea, it's hard in practice. But maybe there's something to that. And that's what people mean when they're like, I can switch this on in this context and switch it off when I'm at home.
Do you know what? I'm thinking the disadvantage with switching it on and off, right? I'm thinking like, I don't know if you're watching the World Cup at the moment. I see the occasional game. I see like a character. I look at a guy like Bellingham, right? A guy that's like kind of strikes me as quite high ego. I wonder if when he tries to switch that switch off, he goes home at night. Is he still like very? Do you reckon he'd still be very, very angry when he goes home at night and he can't sleep? Or is he able to just switch that thing off? Because I think of someone like that and I kind of go like, can you actually switch stuff on and off? Maybe you can get really good at it, but I'm not. That's a skill in itself.
No, it is. It is in two modes. And maybe it's something that comes with maturity as a person and as an athlete. I feel like Lionel Messi probably fixates less about his performances, maybe because he's just probably the best player in the world still, but he doesn't fixate on performances because he's just had so many reps in the game and doesn't need to prove anything to himself or anyone else. He can probably go home to his wife and kids and sleep well and not care about chances that he missed or passes that got intercepted or whatever. And a younger player that still feels like they have something to prove to themselves, their coaches, their family, the nation, still has to play with a sense of desperation. And so they hold on more to how they performed and they can't let that go. I think it is a real skill. You're right. It's not simple. No.
Mm. I think this would be a nice transition into your point about failures and setbacks.
Yeah. So, it's nothing too spectacular and it's nothing too different from things we've discussed before. But there were two quotes that I'd come across over the last week and I've been thinking about them and kind of putting them together. One was that failure only feels bad in the weeds, but feels good in hindsight. And I think that's maybe I've got it from somewhere, I've forgotten where it's from, but this idea that in the micro, a setback is the most painful thing you can imagine. But when you reflect on it months, years, decades later, you are the most proud of how you overcome that adversity and you can see how much it's driven you towards growth. I mean, even in a life context I thought this about a couple of years ago, maybe I think maybe said it to you on the podcast, but the parts of my life I'm most proud of were in the moment probably the most uncomfortable. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Wasn't it, what's his name from Think Twice? The guy we had on, what was his name? Samuel.
Sam, yeah.
Didn't he ask, like, when you look on your life, is it chaos or calm that pops out like most profoundly to you? There was a question on that anyway.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying, the difficulty, the adversity, the chaos is what is most salient towards us in reflection and actually is what we're most proud of and what benefits us most because it teaches us things and it forces us to grow. Okay, that's great. The other thing I've been thinking about is this quote I saw. Can't remember where it came from, so sorry if you're the person that wrote it. But it said, failure is a fated outcome. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's kind of the Shakespearean, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Failure is not bad because of those points I've made previously about how it affects us in hindsight and over a long period of time. It's just not the outcome that we anticipated. Because you can't go into a game or a situation and not hope that you'll win. You can't go there thinking, I'm going to go lose this. I mean, maybe there are games where you're massively unmatched, but in most cases, you're not going in thinking we're going to lose. And so failure is just not the outcome you expected. It's kind of like Peterson when he says, living in order is when what you expect will happen happens. And chaos is when
Mm.
what you
Mm.
expect to happen. That's what I'm talking about with failure here. Failure is not a bad thing. It hurts because you might be a little bit socially humiliated when somebody beats you in some sort of dominance display. And, it might set you back. You didn't get the medal that you wanted, so you got to wait 4 more years for the next Olympic cycle to do it all again or whatever. You've got to earn back some reputation that you might have lost. But it's not bad in the overall scheme of things, when you come out of the weeds and you see it in hindsight, it's just the unanticipated outcome. And then I learned a couple things recently about some key sports stars, and I know we've had conversations at length about how these people aren't necessarily great role models, but let's expand out of their personal case and see the lesson here. So, for example, Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team one year when he was in high school. So he didn't have an immaculate path to being the best basketball player ever. Tom Brady, the NFL American football guy, he was 199th in his draft. Do you know what that means? Like when they've got new players coming in from colleges to play in the NFL, right? He
Mm.
was 99th pick out of 250 to go to his team. And he's now pretty much undisputedly the best American football player of all time. And Kobe Bryant spent his first 2 seasons in the NBA riding the bench. There was failures, there was setbacks, there was unanticipated outcomes for all of these people that became some of the best in their field. And so, as I say, they're not the best role models for the average person due to things that we've talked about. But what this does tell me is that all journeys towards self-cultivation and self-transcendence, they're like the stock market. You know, they're not a smooth linear graph going up. There's constant ups and downs and peaks and troughs. But when you zoom out to the 50-year time frame of the stock market, it's an overall very positive trend. You compare it today from yesterday, there might be a massive drop, but overall that trend is positive. And so failure is uncomfortable in the weeds, but potentially beneficial in hindsight. And we have to understand that in some and potentially most cases, the trough is necessary to reach the peak. And it's kind of like what we talked about with Robert Greene when he said that it's dangerous to get it right the first time. 100% agree with that. But I also think it's dangerous to get it right too much, or to get it right without the correct amount of effort and dedication and self-growth. So yeah.
I hope this is true, you know. I think it is. I think it is. Just for my own personal story, like, I just hope I look back on my last 2 years of uni, and in like 5 years' time, and I can look back on the failure and like be happy for the failure. Like I really hope this idea is true, because even now, like a week off from uni, I'm like my life is a little bit more like it's more calm. Like it's kind of insane.
Like whenever you get to your level of success, whatever that is or means, you'll look back on this time as certainly where you molded the guy that you became. For sure. For sure.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and I do think it's I think it's definitely a mindset shift that it's very useful to integrate, that the most successful people are the people that have made more mistakes and more failures. And I think and when you're in it, it's horrible, but in 10 years down the line, you'll be making decisions that would take you, that you can make in 30 seconds, that would take you sort of, yeah, like a month to make um, at your current age. So I think it's a very good reminder. And it's also like you're just a certain amount of failures away from success, and that why are you not afraid? I think the issue then is like, if you're firstly, are you okay with failure? And if the answer's no, then why? Because it's a fear thing. And if it's a fear thing, then you need to understand that fear's a mile wide and an inch deep, and that you can just, that a seed of doubt grows into something that's a massive dragon in your psyche, and is really what's costing you from improving your life and becoming that person that you want to be. So I think the root of it is going to be fear a lot of the time.
I think it takes psychological work to be willing to fail and willing to be wrong and willing to see setbacks in such a positive light. Um, yeah, 100% true. That takes time. That just takes reps of not getting what you want and maturing. being able to recover and get back on the horse. And also, like, back to the chaos and order point, right? If we see success as order and winning as order, and order being what you expect to happen and when you get what you want, and chaos and failure being chaos, setbacks being chaos where you don't get what you want. You don't want a life of just order because it's too predictable. It's too boring. It's almost stagnant. You need the yang to the yin. You know, you need the chaos eventually or occasionally erupting to the surface and rocking your reality a bit and making you think and making you act on your feet and adapt. So I think there was a podcast I listened to ages ago, where this lady, I can't remember her name, but I loved the sentiment of what she said. And she was like, she was trying to figure out what the optimal number of failures is towards the biggest success. I want to say she was on Lex Friedman's podcast, trying to figure out, like, algorithmically, what's the optimal number of failures, because in that's an understanding that you need to fall into chaos occasionally. You just do. And so it makes
Yeah.
me have a healthier perspective on everything, especially
Yeah.
being an athlete and personal and team failures you have to go through.
Mm. I saw a clip of Hormozy recently. He broke down like the transition from like the person starting out to someone in the game and like thriving. And he said the three things in order are like, first of all, they're scared of what other people think of them before they start. Second of all, they start and they don't have the work ethic. Third of all, they are doing too many things at the same time, so they can't focus. And I think if you get those three things right, then you're like in the game as an active like player, and like you have a very good chance of winning whatever game you're in. I think to sort of come towards the end of the podcast, I think it might be good about your recent caffeine experience to finish on like a nice lighter note. Well, it's not really
Yeah,
a
no,
lighter note, but yeah.
uh, less philosophically deep, I guess. It's so interesting, is that, like, I think I saw it in a video I watched about caffeine when I was going through this experience, that, like, on average, we the world drinks 2.2 billion cups of coffee a day or something. I don't know where that statistic came from, but it was something like that in the video I watched. I mean, it's so prevalent in our species, caffeine, as this, like, external stimulant that can get you up in the morning and get you to work and smoothen your brain. And, you know, it's proven in sports science how much caffeine can help your reaction time and your muscle contraction and muscle power and all this kind of shit. I mean, it's like it's a fucking super pill. But the danger is that you have it so much that you put up a tolerance and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And for people listening, like, I was in a position where I always say that as a younger teenager, I'm never going to drink coffee because I don't want to get addicted to it. And what happened? I got addicted to it. Not addicted as in, like, I needed more and more cups every day and I was crazy, but I couldn't sit here and do this podcast today without a cup of coffee. Well, maybe I could, but I'd be terrible. My brain would be mush. Um, and every morning I was just waking up, not feeling rested. And it would be like, right, the first sort of hour or two of my day would be doing things in order to get to when I can drink my cup of coffee. I mean, it's just painful to even think about. I'm enslaved by this stimulant. And this is something I heard Michael Pollan talk about. Michael Pollan talked about uh, caffeinated consciousness being people's baseline, and that if they hadn't had their cup of coffee or their hit of caffeine when they wake up in the morning, they feel below baseline, they feel dysfunctional, and so they need that drink in order to get themselves to baseline function, to default mode. And I was in that state, and I hated it. Hated it. When I traveled, it was like, when can I get a coffee, or relying on people. Oh, can we stop? Can we stop on the way so I can get, you know, my hit of my fucking drug in the morning? I just hated it, bro. So I wanted to stop, so I wasn't reliant on it, and I could wake up in the morning and live a normal day and not be reliant on the drink to exist. And I also, in the last few days, having been off it, I did feel like it was affecting my anxiety and my energy levels, 100%. Like yesterday, I was talking to my girlfriend at like 6 p.m. we just had dinner, and dinner was like a big bowl of like pasta and chicken and tomato and carrot and stuff. And I used to say that like my diet made me have brain fog, and like loads of pasta made me have brain fog. But I was lying there talking to her, and I was like, my brain feels clear right now. And it's 6 p.m. On a normal day when I was drinking coffee all the time, by 4 p.m., I'm stupid. I've crashed. And I said to Julia, I could film a podcast now. It's like, maybe it takes me a little bit longer to get up in the morning, but once I've maybe 45 minutes been awake, I can be pretty functional for like 12 hours. And then maybe 9 p.m. I start getting tired. When I had coffee, it was like, I'd be really productive for about 3 hours and then I crash. Um, and so that's where I'm at. And to people, I didn't probably explain it very well, but I just stopped drinking coffee, didn't do anything for 2 days. Third day, I started like training and writing a bit. And now this is day 5, I think. And I had like a dull headache for 2 days and was very irritable and grumpy. And my sleep was weird for a bit. But now I'm on the other side of it. And I think now my reflection is that I probably will go back to drinking coffee again because I love it and I love the brain fucking rush and I love the of a good quality like cappuccino or flat white. And I'm going to move to Italy and they're good at their bloody coffee. Do you know what I mean? But I want to have a better relationship with it and I want to be intentional. I don't want it to be every day. And if it becomes a reliance again, like it was, at least I know what the detox is like and it's actually not that bad. It's just 2 or 3 days where I feel a bit unfunctional and shit. And just can't really do any work or training. So, yeah. And also, I guess one thing I've written here that I haven't mentioned yet is how much that cup of coffee became part of my daily routine and ritual in my work process. I wouldn't ever sit down for a podcast, really, unless it was the afternoon without a cup beside me. I would never sit at my laptop and write an essay without a cup beside me. And so it almost became like a horcrux of mine, you know, like it's such a part of my soul was reliant on that drink in the morning. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm at a better place now. I'm probably not going to drink it for at least a month-ish. I might have a nice one in a couple of weeks and just see how it feels. But something that Michael Pollan said when he went on Rogan was he took 3 months off caffeine. And then he said that cup of coffee he had after 3 months off caffeine was like almost psychedelic. He said it gave him so much happiness and euphoria. He went into a different world. So is what I say relate to you in any way, Jacob, or am I just weird and very sensitive to these kind of things?
No, I'm wondering. It relates to me. I'm wondering if it relates to everyone else that's listening.
Yeah. Maybe they drink the coffee and shut up, bruv. But who knows?
I think we should take like a break of coffee like once every like 6 months. And I think it is almost like a friend when like in everyday life. If you're like a productive, heavy, ambitious guy, then it's gonna help probably. And I think it was really tough for me, like the first 3 days of it. So I did the same as Joel, and I went like a week, and my recommendations for anyone taking like a break off shit, I think you just have to like keep yourself busy and not like, especially like physical stuff is great to just distract yourself. Just keep distracting yourself for the first 3 days and you'll be good. And then it comes like pretty easy. And I think, yeah, back on it, I think you're kind of a little bit more aware of what you're getting yourself into because every day you become so desensitized to it. I mean, I went through a crazy period in exam time, in essay time for uni where I was on like 3 a day. Like, yeah, it was heavy. My caffeine spend is like one of the most like, it's a crazy bill. I can't lie. I reckon, yeah, I reckon I spend almost as much on coffee as I do on food. Like it's crazy. Um, but it was like that the happiest part of my day a lot of the time. So
It's a powerful tool that can improve performance, but it's a bloody tempting mistress. It should be kept. And you know, I think that's the message that I'm telling myself is that you can use it, but you don't want it to use you. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful I did it, and I may return to caffeinated consciousness this summer. Who knows? But I know I can detox off it if I need to. And that power of knowing that I can just say no one day and maybe I'll feel shit and won't be able to produce much. I can. And yeah, maybe this is a call for people to think about their relationship with caffeine, because at the end of the day, it is a stimulant.
Yeah, if you'd like to tell us about your caffeinated consciousness, then DM us and we'll take a look.
Please do. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Cool.
hope you enjoyed this one. We've been last month really, it's been sort of more trickier to stay consistent with uploads and stuff, but we're getting back on it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Nice one, man.